is nothing quite like the feeling of coming home. When I think of home, I think of comfort, of security, of warmth and family. During the spring of my junior year in college, I lived in a small city in northern Spain known as Oviedo. It was a glorious time for me, and I felt like I had lived many lives in a short 6 months. They say when you return home from living abroad, it is often difficult to reacclimate to your normal life. You are so changed by what you experienced, but the people you have returned home to be with did not share them with you. So how could they ever understand what a profound effect it had on who you are? For veterans like Mr. Fiddler, returning home meant something much different. I would hypothesize that it was a relief from the fear of constant attack. Coming home meant picking up a life he had hardly had the chance to start when he was drafted at 18. It meant living with the unsavory memories of war, but it also meant pride in having served something greater than themselves, their country. In this, our 10th episode, we look at what it was like to be declared the victor and to finally go home. I'm Marley Hawes, and I'm sitting here with Kenneth H. Fiddler, also known as the Ping Jockey. Last week, you told us about the horrific kamikaze attack on the USS Loy. What happened after that attack? How was the ship repaired?
On June 7th, we got underway at 1800 for Leyte in the Philippine Islands. Tuesday afternoon, we arrived in Leyte Gulf and were anchored by 1300. The next morning, we tied up starboard side to the destroyer tender Yosemite, AD 19, for battle damage repairs. By July 20th, 1945, the crew of the Yosemite mended our broken ship. We didn't mind waiting because it gave us a chance to get a lot of rest while we enjoyed some beer parties on the beach. At 0800 on July 20th, we left the USS AD-19 and refueled from the tanker AGG-41. Unfortunately, we had to discharge 50,000 gallons of fuel the next day in preparation to go in dry dock due to an oil leak in the starboard side.
What does that mean that you had to discharge the oil?
After they had just filled the tanks and they found that oil leak, they had to pump it all out.
Oh.
That's discharging the same as pumping it out.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it had gone back in the water or if they pumped it back out. I gotcha.
Yeah, okay.
Then what happened?
By July 23rd, they were finished, and at 0800, we went back to the tanker to refuel. We then made a degaussing run and calibrated the compasses. A degaussing run is an electrical thing that they put wires on the outside of the ship, and they check things for magnetic and what they have so it won't affect the compass.
Oh, cool.
July 30th, we got underway for the island of Luzon. We arrived the next day and anchored in Legazpi near Mayon volcano. On August 5th, we got underway for maneuvers with APDs 38, 59, 60, 62, 63, and 77. The next day, we practiced having a small invasion. On August 7th, we went back to Legazpi and left for Leyte with APD 38 and 65. We anchored in berth 38 on August 9th, and the next day we were informed that the United States dropped an atom bomb on Hiroshima. and Nagasaki. On August 15th, Japan announced their acceptance of our peace terms. We were very happy because we had been told we were being trained for the invasion of Japan.
What was that like when you guys found out that they had dropped the atom bomb?
Well, they know that probably saved a bunch of lives, because if we were going to be in that invasion of Japan, that wasn't going to be easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Things stood still for a while, and we took it easy. Since the war was over, we no longer had to darken the ship, and they showed movies on the fantail every night. Boy, it was nice feeling not to have to worry about the next air raid.
Oh, I'm sure.
On the evening of September 2nd, we were watching a movie when all of a sudden a voice over the loudspeaker announced the war was officially over and Japan had signed our peace terms. Just that quick, every ship in the harbor blew their whistles, rang their bells, and fired their ready pistols, which made it seem like the 4th of July. What an amazing sight and feeling that was. Amen.
Wow. And you knew then that you were probably going to be going home soon.
Well, we thought it might be a chance.
But what happened next? You weren't quite on your way home yet.
Well, we left Lady on September 11th, and which was the second anniversary of the commission of the USS Loy. Upon our departure, we escorted a small aircraft carrier headed for Manila. We passed several small islands when all of a sudden our compasses went haywire. The officer on the deck reported it to the captain, and he said to the officers, "Just keep our ship directly in front of the carrier." We did as well as we were told, and at 0800 the next morning, we received a message from the carrier. "Congratulations on excellent navigation. Our compasses had been out all night, and we have been following right behind you." How is that for the blind leading the blind? I'm happy to say we arrived safely in Manila and left the next day for Lingayen Gulf.
Wow. That's pretty funny that they had no idea that you guys couldn't tell where you were going, but they kept following.
Yeah.
And you did an excellent job.
We're lucky we got there all right.
While the war was over, was there any other threats? Anything that could harm the ship? Any sort of attacks?
Yeah, I think I would say that. On September 20th, we got underway at 0615 with 23 troop transports, 2 patrol craft, and 1 other APD. We headed for Kobe, Japan, with all these troops. And on the night of September 22nd, we passed within 100 miles of Okinawa. We received a report that a mine in the area hit a ship, and we were all on edge. We saw many floating mines cut loose by minesweepers. We also encountered live mines and blew up or sank most of them during the day. But when it got dark, it was another story. The Commodore of the convoy instructed all the troop ships to line up in one line, one column, and told our captain to put our ship at the head of the column. And if we couldn't sink or blow up the mine, you better hit it to your ship before they hit us. Boy, and I thought the war was over. We managed to get through the next couple of days and destroyed a lot of mines during the day and some at night. Since the water was calm, we picked up some mines on radar and shot at them when we were close enough to see it. To play it safe, though, the captain made everyone who wasn't needed below decks sleep up on the main deck with life jackets on. That way, if we hit a mine, there would not be so many casualties.
You guys never hit a mine, though, did you?
No. If it would, we probably wouldn't be here.
What happened next?
At midnight on September 25th, we arrived at the swept channel and proceeded through it. That's where they were cutting up all the mines that were floating around. We sighted a few mines on the way in, but all the ships passed clear. We showed up at Wakayama by 05:30 and spent the next month there while troop ships unloaded. We weren't allowed to go ashore because we were told it was unsafe. However, some of us went ashore a few times on business. We experienced an oncoming typhoon during our stay at Wakayama, and we rode it at anchor with our engines running full speed into the wind. Then ran upward, the wind was 130 miles an hour. We survived the storm, refueled on October 25th, and left the next day at 12:40.
So the war was over, but you couldn't predict the weather.
Yeah, and it still wasn't over. Along with the USS Barber, USS Bassett, and the USS Register, we proceeded to Nagoya, Japan, and encountered another typhoon. The winds were fierce and hit us on the beam. Normally, in a storm like that, we headed straight into the wind to keep from rolling so much. But since we were still in the channel, we had to follow it. And even though there were minefields on both sides, at one point we made rolls up to 65 degrees and almost toppled. At the last minute, a big wave hit us and got us started back on the other way.
What luck.
Somehow we managed to get out of the channel and headed into the winds. By October 27th, we anchored safely in Nagoya, Japan, and stayed there until November 1st. From there, we made our way to Taku, China, with a large communication ship by the name of USS Wasatch AGC-9. We arrived early in the morning on November 5th, and that same day, I went on Liberty into the city of Tinson. We didn't have much time to explore, but I came back with a bunch of coins with a hole through the middle.
Oh, cool.
When I got back to the ship, I found out that I had enough points to get discharged. I forgot how many points I needed, but I was one of the first group to go home because I had my mother as a dependent. That placed me in the same class as a married man. As you can imagine, I was quite surprised to go home after all that time.
On November 6th, Mr. Fiddler said goodbye to everyone on his ship, and he was transferred to the USS Wasatch. He took that all the way to San Diego, California, where he and his buddy, Jerry Fink, boarded a troop train headed for Bainbridge, Maryland. And once you arrived in Bainbridge, Maryland, the Navy paid for your train fare back to Reading, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, but before we did that, when we got to Bainbridge, they gave us a physical because we were leaving the Navy.
Yeah.
And they tried 6 times to get blood on my arm, and they couldn't do it. And they said, okay, you're going home. Forget it.
It didn't matter as much then. Well, what was it like to go back to your mom?
It was good and bad.
Yeah.
Mostly good. Because she was living alone the whole time I was in World War II. And we had lived in a small apartment, which a man had bought because he wanted to move his electrical business in there. And just about that time I got drafted, and he tried to move my mother out, and they found out he couldn't do that. 2 sons in the service.
Yeah.
And he had to wait till the end of the war.
Okay.
And as soon as they got there, he said,
You're out.
You're out of here soon. And then my brother got home, and we had to find another house. And that's when we bought the one on Pear Street.
And did you get a job when you came home? What was it like to reacclimate?
That's an interesting story. The government had a plan that the veterans, until they got a job, would be paid, I think it was $20 a...
The government was going to pay $50 a week for 52 weeks if people
That's
couldn't find work?
I think, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a buddy, when they paid you that $50 a week, they were looking for a job for you. And my buddy said, when they asked him, what can you do? He said, I'm a poet. And they never could find a job for a poet. So he collected $50 a week for the whole year.
My goodness.
And before I got drafted, a buddy of mine had gone to Textile Machine Works. They were advertising for machine apprentices. And they said they were interested in us, but since we were getting drafted, come back at the end of the war. And so, first week I was home, I went there and got a job. And working from then on, I never collected $50 at all.
Well, you're a hard worker, so I'm not surprised. You wanted to earn your money. So you went to be trained for that, or?
Yeah, I went to Textile Machine Works, and they had a good apprentice program. And you worked in the shop for a month, and then you went to Wyoming Polytechnic Institute for a month, and that kept rotating, supposedly for 4 years. But since they worked a lot overtime, I ended up learning my trade in about 3.5 years. When I started my apprenticeship, I found out that the government would pay for all the tools that I would need, and they paid me a certain amount a month for every month I went to school. That was a big help.
Did you have any trouble when you came home after the war? Trouble sleeping? Trouble getting back to normal life?
No, I'm surprised. I was just glad to be home.
Yeah.
And especially since I got a job right away and learning the apprenticeship. That kept me busy 60 hours a week.
So focusing your time and energy into that was a really good thing for you.
Yeah, and somebody had to pay the bills, so that was me.
And did I read that you were making 42 cents an hour when you started?
42 and a half.
Don't forget that half cent. Every penny counts.
And when they paid us, at the end of the week, we got paid in silver dollars. That was different.
Oh my goodness. A lot different than the direct deposit that most of us are used to nowadays, straight to the bank account.
I don't think so.
And did you...
Because It was my mother and I living together, and soon after that, my brother started going to college. And first he went to Penn State. And after I bought my first car, sometimes he borrowed it to drive to Penn State.
Well, you guys were very caring and sharing in your family was pretty important, so I think that's great. He did help you with your first business, so you did owe him something.
Yeah.
So coming home was a big relief. Do you have any final words for our listeners?
Yeah, I was much happier. I didn't have to worry about air raids or anything like that anymore. I felt much safer. I was working, and I was much happier. Thank you.
And more time to live the life you wanted to. This is Marley and the Ping Jockey signing off.
Bye-bye.